The great halls of the Zareth Empire stretched high like mountains carved into silver. Their walls glowed with strange crystals reflecting light in 1,000 colors. At the center of this hall stood a throne of obsidian, dark as night, where the emperor sat in silence. Around him, nobles, priests, and generals whispered softly, afraid their words might echo too loud. For today was not an ordinary day. Today the princess appeared. Her name was Leora. She entered slowly, dressed in flowing robes that shimmered like liquid starlight. Every step she took was careful, graceful, and heavy with the weight of tradition. But what caught every eye was not her beauty, not her gown, but the silver veil covering her face, thin as spider silk yet impenetrable to sight. The veil was bound to her since birth. It was said the veil was not for modesty. It was not for fashion. It was for fear. Whispers followed her everywhere. They say her face is cursed. They say anyone who sees it goes mad. No, it is worse. They say the gods punished her family. Her face bears the mark of their anger. None of the whispers were ever proven true. No one had ever seen her face to confirm them. Still, the legend grew like a wildfire, burning across star systems. Every suitor who came demanded the same thing: show us her face. Every suitor who asked was denied. And so every suitor left. The people pitied her. The court avoided her. Even her own kin treated her as though her face carried death itself. Leora learned to live with silence. She learned to speak softly, to move carefully, to keep her head bowed. She learned to hide not only her face but also her dreams. For what use were dreams to a princess no one dared to touch? What use was love to someone who was seen only as a curse? But Leora in her heart longed. She longed to be chosen not for her title, not for her throne, not even for her face, but for herself. And yet, no one dared. On the other side of the galaxy, word of the veiled princess reached human ears. Most humans laughed at the tale. An alien princess with a cursed face? They scoffed. Old myths, old fears. Humans were curious by nature, sometimes reckless, sometimes brave. But few ever dared travel to the throne world of Zareth. It was a place of strict laws and ancient pride. Outsiders were rarely welcomed except for one man. His name was Elias. He was no king, no general, no noble warrior. He was a simple envoy, a man sent to bring words of peace between his world and theirs. He had no army, no wealth, no reason to stand in a hall filled with alien lords. And yet he stood tall, his gaze steady, his heart unshaken. When Elias first saw the princess, the court waited for his reaction. They expected him to ask about the veil. They expected him to demand what every other suitor demanded. But Elias only bowed, placed his hand over his chest, and said with quiet respect, "I came to see you, not the mask you wear." The words rippled through the hall like thunder. Nobles laughed bitterly. Priests shook their heads in scorn. Even the emperor's eyes narrowed in disbelief. Was this human foolish? Did he not know the ancient warnings? Did he not understand the danger? But Princess Leora behind her veil froze. For the first time in her life, someone had spoken to her. Not to the curse, not to the fear, not to the legend. Someone had looked beyond the silver veil, not with eyes but with heart. Her lips trembled as she whispered, so soft only he could hear. "Do you not fear what I am?" Elias lifted his eyes to hers, his voice calm, steady, and warm. "I do not fear what I do not see. I trust what I feel." And in that single moment, something stirred inside her chest. Something fragile. Something she thought she had buried long ago. Hope. But hope was dangerous in the court of Zareth. The nobles whispered behind fans of metal and silk. "The human is reckless. He mocks us. He does not respect tradition." The priests hissed in dark tones. "If he bonds with her without seeing her face, the curse will spread. He will doom us all." Even the emperor frowned, his voice like iron when he spoke. "Human, do you know the law? No bond is sealed without truth, and truth is seen in the face. Do you dare defy our ways?" Elias did not flinch. "Your ways bind her in chains. I see truth in her voice, in her soul. Why should I demand more?" The hall fell into silence. Leora's heart pounded behind her ribs. She had never heard anyone defend her so openly. She had never heard anyone speak to her not as a prisoner of legend, but as a living soul. For the first time, her hands, hidden in long sleeves, clutched tightly at her dress, as though to hold on to this moment, this strange human, this fragile spark of courage. That night, Leora stood alone in her chamber. staring at her reflection in a mirror she dared not touch, her own face hidden even from herself. She remembered his words, each one sinking deeper into her heart. I came to see you. I trust what I feel. I see truth in your soul. No one had ever said such things to her. No one had ever refused the veil. She pressed her hands against her chest and whispered into the silence. Who is this human? And why does my heart not feel so heavy anymore? Outside her door, the stars shone brighter, as though they too were waiting to see where this fragile thread of fate might lead. The Empire still believed her cursed. The court still demanded her veil remain, but for the first time in her life, Leora felt something different. She felt seen, and that, to her, was the beginning of everything. The next day, the great hall of Zareth was filled with murmurs again. Everyone expected the human to leave. No suitor ever stayed after the first refusal. That was the tradition. That was the way things had always been. But Elias did not leave. Instead, he walked calmly to the gardens where the princess often spent her lonely hours. The gardens of the palace were unlike any on earth. Trees glowed with blue leaves, flowers shimmered with soft light, and rivers of silver water flowed quietly between them. Yet for Leora, even such beauty had always felt like a cage. The garden was her prison, the only place she was allowed to walk without eyes burning into her. And then Elias entered. He did not bow this time, nor did he act with the stiff formality of nobles. He simply looked around in wonder, his eyes shining. Your garden, he said softly. Looks like the stars themselves came down to bloom. Leora turned her head slightly. Behind her veil, her lips curved, though she had forgotten what it felt like to smile. Most call it a prison, she whispered. Elias glanced at her. Then they have no eyes. A prison has walls. But this, he stretched out his hands toward the glowing trees. This is life. If you are here, then it cannot be ugly. Her heart skipped. Words like that were dangerous. Words like that stirred emotions she was not supposed to feel. She lowered her gaze. You do not ask me to remove my veil. You do not demand the truth as others do. Elias sat on a stone bench, unbothered. Why would I? If you are comfortable behind it, then let it be. A veil is cloth. It is not you. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Only the gentle sound of silver water flowing broke the stillness. At last, Leora asked quietly, Do you not wish to know what I look like? Elias smiled, his voice steady and sure. If your face matters more than your soul, then I came for the wrong reason. The words struck her like light in the darkness. So simple, so bold, so impossible. That evening, when Elias left, the council gathered in secret. This cannot continue, one noble hissed. The human is dangerous, another agreed. He questions our laws. If he bonds with her, a priest warned, he will break the old ways. Our people will lose faith, but the emperor did not speak yet. His eyes were heavy, his thoughts unreadable. He was bound by tradition, yet he was also a father. Somewhere inside he wondered, was the human a fool? Or did he see something the rest of them had missed? The next day Elias returned again. He carried nothing, no jewels, no gifts, no promises of power. Instead he brought a small wooden instrument. What is that? Leora asked, tilting her head. A flute, Elias answered with a grin. Something from my world. He lifted it to his lips and began to play. A soft, sweet sound filled the garden. It was unlike anything Leora had ever heard. It was gentle but alive, carrying joy and sorrow together like a song of the heart. Her hands trembled slightly. It sounds like the wind. It is, Elias said. On earth, when the wind blows through the trees, it sings. I missed that sound. So I made it with this. Leora listened. The music touched her in a place words never could. She closed her eyes, and for the first time, she imagined herself walking freely, without veil, without fear, under a sky filled with stars. When the song ended, she whispered, Why do you show me such things? No one ever gives me more than silence. Elias looked at her gently. Because silence is not what you deserve. You deserve to feel the world. Her breath caught. She turned away quickly, afraid her emotions might betray her. But others had seen. The guards at the edges of the garden watched with narrow eyes. The nobles reported every moment. Rumors spread across the palace like wildfire. The human dares to sing to her. He dares to speak of freedom. Does he think he can charm away the curse? Yet no matter the whispers, Elias came again the next day and the day after that. Sometimes he told stories of his world. Stories of oceans that stretched endless where water touched the sky. Stories of mountains covered in snow, taller than the towers of Zareth. Stories of children running barefoot, chasing bright cloth kites against the wind. Leora listened with wide eyes. She had never left her world. She had never even walked beyond the palace walls. Through his words she traveled. Through his voice she dreamed. On Earth, Elias said one evening, when it rains, the air smells like hope. Have you ever smelled rain? Leora shook her head slowly. Here, rain smells of stone, cold, heavy. Then one day, Elias smiled. I will take you to Earth. You will smell it yourself. Her chest tightened. No one had ever spoken of a future with her before. One evening, as the two sat under the glowing trees, Leora finally asked what had weighed on her heart for days. Do you not fear me? Do you not fear what I might be? Elias leaned closer, his eyes calm, his voice low. If you are cursed, then let the curse fall on me. I would rather suffer truth than live in fear. Her breath caught. The words sank deep, wrapping around her like warmth in the cold. For a moment she wanted to lift her veil. For a moment she wanted to let him see her as she truly was, but fear held her hand still. Centuries of warnings, of shame, of whispered legends pressed down on her. She could not yet. But inside her a spark had been lit. A spark that no counsel, no noble, no curse could easily put out. That night, when Elias had gone, Leora stood by her window, staring at the stars. The veil felt heavier than ever, yet her heart felt lighter. She pressed her fingers against the fabric covering her face and whispered, He does not see me, and yet, he sees me more than anyone ever has. And for the first time in her life, the princess dared to dream that maybe, just maybe, she was not cursed at all. Days passed, and the palace seemed to shrink around Leora. Her life had always been measured by rituals, by the soft whispers of caution, and the heavy expectations of the empire. But with Elias each day felt different. Each day was a thread of something fragile and new, something she had almost forgotten. Freedom. He came without a schedule, without demands, only with stories and quiet laughter. He spoke of Earth's oceans where water stretched endlessly, carrying the sun's reflection like a mirror. He spoke of mountains so tall they pierced clouds where the wind seemed alive, carrying secrets from the world above. And he spoke of children running, their laughter echoing across fields, chasing kites that danced against the wind. Leora listened, hidden behind her veil, but for the first time, she did not feel trapped. She felt a pull in her chest, a warmth she could not name. One evening, under the glow of luminescent trees, Elias paused mid-story. He turned to her with his soft, steady eyes. Princess, he said, do you know what it means to be brave? Leora hesitated. Brave? She had followed rules her entire life, obeyed without question, hidden her face and dreams alike. I do not know, she whispered. Elias smiled faintly. Then let me show you. Bravery is not in fighting armies or crossing galaxies. It is in choosing to feel when the world tells you not to. It is in touching even when you fear the pain. It is in trusting someone with your heart, even if no one has ever trusted you before. Leora's breath caught. She had never been touched, never been trusted. The court had kept her veiled. The laws had kept her isolated. The legends had kept her afraid. She wanted to believe him, but fear trembled in her chest. Touch me, she whispered, almost without realizing it. I have never allowed anyone to touch me. Elias's hand hovered for a moment, hesitant only to respect her. Then slowly, gently, he reached for hers. His fingers brushed against the silk of her gloves. The world seemed to hold its breath. Leora gasped softly. She expected pain, magic, disaster, the curse the legends warned of. But there was nothing, only warmth. A warmth that spread from her chest through her fingers down to her toes, until her whole body felt lighter than air. Her laughter broke the silence of the garden. Not the polite, quiet laughter of a princess, but pure, unguarded joy. You are not afraid, she said, eyes wide behind the veil. I am afraid, Elias admitted. But courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to move forward anyway. Her heart trembled. She could not remember a time when anyone had looked at her with such care, such patience, such understanding. She wanted to pull her hands back, to hide from the intensity of the moment, but she could not. Something inside her had begun to blossom, fragile but real. Word of their meeting spread quickly, as it always did in a palace filled with whispers. The council gathered, frowning, their voices heavy with worry. The human defies every law, one noble hissed. He touches her, another added, without seeing her face, without the emperor's command. This is madness. The high priest's voice cut sharper than a blade. He flouts sacred tradition. He risks the wrath of the stars themselves. If he continues, he will bring shame upon the empire, and danger to the princess. Leora's chest tightened at the thought. Yet when she returned to the garden, Elias was waiting. Always waiting. Do they frighten you? He asked gently. She shook her head, though her hands trembled. They try. But when you are here, I forget them. Good, Elias said softly. Then let us forget them together even for a moment. The world outside will wait, but here, now it is ours. Days turned into weeks. Elias taught her to walk along the streams without fear, to feel the cool silver water against her fingers. He brought flowers from distant lands, strange and glowing, that smelled of rain and sun and new beginnings. Slowly, Leora began to speak more openly, laughing at his jokes, asking questions about Earth, about humans, about stars beyond their galaxy. She began to trust him, not with the veil, not yet, but with her thoughts, her dreams, her heart. One afternoon, Elias held a small, flat stone in his hand. Watch, he said. He threw it gently into the silver river, and the water rippled in brilliant colors, reflecting the sky above. Why does it shine like that? Leora asked, fascinated. Because light always finds a way, he said, smiling at her. Even through darkness, even through fear. She looked at him, and for a long moment she thought she could believe that maybe her life was not meant to be fear and silence, that maybe she could find a world outside the rules and the veil. But the council's warnings grew louder. Guards followed Elias silently, reporting every visit. The nobles grew restless, murmuring about scandal and disgrace. One night, as the two sat beneath the glowing branches, Leora finally admitted her fear. What if the curse is real? She whispered, her voice small. What if something terrible happens to you? Elias took her hand again, holding it firmly without hesitation. Then I will face it, he said softly. If I fall, I fall. But I would rather face danger with you than live my life afraid of shadows. Tears welled in her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her with such devotion, such honesty. She had spent her life hidden, unseen, afraid. And yet here was a human, a fragile, mortal human, choosing to stand by her, choosing to believe in her. Her heart ached, and yet it soared. For the first time, Leora felt a bond that was not forged by law, by duty, or by expectation. It was forged by choice, by courage, by trust, and that bond, it terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. That night she stood by her window, staring at the twin moons that hung low in the sky. She pressed her hands to her chest, feeling the warmth of Elias's touch lingering in her skin. Am I foolish? She whispered to the empty room. Am I too late to feel this? And in the quiet, in the stillness, she heard the echo of his voice, soft but firm, carrying hope across the distance. You are not foolish. You are brave, and I am here. Always. For the first time in her life, Leora allowed herself to believe that perhaps the legends were wrong. Perhaps she was not cursed. Perhaps she was capable of love, of joy, of freedom, and perhaps, just perhaps, she had found someone who would see her, not the veil, not the curse, but her for who she truly was. The palace buzzed with tension. News of Elias and the veiled princess had spread faster than any court messenger could carry it. By the time Leora arrived in the great hall, whispers had already filled every corner. Nobles glared, priests muttered prayers under their breaths, and even some guards exchanged uneasy glances. The human dares to defy tradition, one whispered harshly. He bonds with her without seeing her face. Another hissed, it is sacrilege. If the stars punish us, it will be because of him, a third muttered, shaking his head. Leora felt the weight of every glance and every word. Her heart thumped like a drum inside her chest. She wanted to retreat, to hide behind her veil and pretend nothing had changed. But she could not. Elias was waiting. He stood near the throne, calm and unbowed. His gaze found hers across the room, warm and unwavering. He did not flinch at the hostility that filled the hall. Instead, he smiled softly, as though he carried a shield no words, no scorn, no tradition could pierce. Princess, he said gently, stepping forward. We do not need their fear to guide us. Let us be our own truth. The court erupted. Voices rose, demanding explanations, scolding both human and princess alike. The Emperor's law is clear, the High Priest cried, his voice echoing through the hall. No bond can be sealed without seeing her face. To defy this law is to bring ruin to the Empire. Elias lifted his hands in a gesture of calm. I understand your laws, he said, his voice steady. But laws are made to protect, not to trap. I see her courage, her heart, her soul. I do not need to see her face to know she is worthy. Gasps echoed. The nobles recoiled. Some muttered that he was mad. Others whispered that he was reckless beyond measure. The priest's face turned red with fury. You endanger her, the priest shouted. Do you not fear the curse? Elias met the priest's gaze, unwavering. If she is cursed, I will face it with her. If danger comes, I will protect her. I do not fear the unknown. I fear not trying, and I fear leaving her alone. Leora's heart raced. No one had ever spoken for her like this before. No one had ever dared. She felt a mix of fear, awe, and hope. Her chest felt tight, yet she knew somehow that she could trust him. Later that evening, Leora wandered through the palace gardens, the glow of the luminescent trees painting soft light over the silver pathways. Elias followed quietly, close enough to offer comfort, distant enough to give her space. They are angry, Leora whispered, breaking the silence. They say we will bring shame, danger, even disaster. Elias shook his head gently. Fear is the easiest weapon in the world, he said. They fear what they do not understand. They fear courage. They fear hope. But none of that changes who you are. Her hands trembled as she reached for the hem of her robe. Do you not worry for yourself? I worry, he admitted. I worry for you more. But fear cannot stop love. It cannot stop truth. And it cannot stop someone who chooses to stand by what they believe is right. She looked at him, her eyes glistening behind the veil. For the first time she felt safe, not in the absence of danger, but in the presence of someone who would stand with her, even against the entire empire. The next days were tense. The council met in secret, their voices sharp with anger. The human must leave, one noble declared. He has no right to bond with her without seeing her face. If he refuses, we will remove him by force, another added, voice cold as metal. The high priest nodded gravely. It is not rebellion we fear, it is the breaking of sacred law. If he continues, the gods themselves may intervene. Leora overheard their plots, and fear clawed at her. Yet when she returned to the gardens, Elias was waiting. His presence alone gave her courage. I do not care about their plots, he said softly. They have never lived in your shoes. They have never felt your heart. Let them be angry. Let them threaten. None of that changes the truth I see. Her chest ached with emotion. She had spent her life hidden, invisible, trapped behind the veil, ruled by fear and expectation. Now someone looked at her as though she were a person, not a legend, not a curse, not a story whispered in fear. One evening, as twilight bathed the gardens in purple and gold, Leora finally allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. I am scared, she admitted quietly. I am scared of their anger, of the curse of losing you. Elias took her hand, gentle but firm. Then be scared with me, he said. Do not face it alone. I will be with you. Always. Tears threatened to spill from her eyes. No one had ever offered such promise before, and she felt the weight of centuries pressing on her. But in his eyes she found a light that was stronger than fear, a light that whispered she could be free. For the first time she allowed herself to imagine a life beyond the veil, beyond whispers, beyond fear. A life where she could love and be loved, not for her face, not for her title, not for what the empire demanded, but for who she truly was. Yet danger was never far. The council's anger festered, and rumors of rebellion began to stir among the guards. Some whispered of removing the human by force, of punishing the princess for allowing this defiance. Others spoke of exile, of curses, of the wrath of the stars themselves. Leora felt the tension closing in like a storm. But when she looked at Elias standing quietly among the glowing trees, she felt a strange peace. You are here, she whispered. Even if they come for us, even if everything breaks, you are here. I will always be here, he promised, squeezing her hand gently. No fear, no law, no legend can change that. And for the first time, Leora believed him. She lifted her head slightly behind the veil, feeling strength she had never known. The whispers of the empire, the curses of legend, the fury of the council, they were all around her. but for the first time she felt a courage that belonged only to her, a courage born of choice, a courage born of love. That night, she stood by her window staring at the twin moons hanging in the sky. Her hands lingered on her chest, feeling the warmth of his touch, the echo of his words. They fear us, she thought. They fear what they cannot control. But I am not afraid, not while he is with me. And for the first time in centuries, the princess felt alive. Alive despite the world. Alive because of one human. The palace was colder than usual that morning. The air felt heavy, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Rumors had grown into certainty. The human would not leave. The council had decided. Force would be used if words failed. Leora sensed it before anyone spoke. The guards' glances were sharper, their movements more deliberate. Even the servants whispered warnings. She clutched her veil, feeling the weight of the centuries pressing down on her. Elias stood by the garden entrance, as calm as ever, though Leora could see the tension in his jaw, the slight tightness in his shoulders. He had heard the rumors, felt the court's fury, yet he did not move away. He did not falter. "They will come for us," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They will make you leave." They will not," Elias interrupted gently, holding her gaze. "If they try, I will not let them. You are not theirs to command. You are yours, and I stand with you." Her heart trembled. No one had ever spoken for her like that. Not even her father, not even the council. Only this human, who had crossed galaxies to reach her, who had refused to demand her face, who had chosen her against all fear. By midday, the council arrived in full force. The high priest led the procession, robes flowing, eyes blazing with righteous fury. Behind him, nobles and guards moved like a storm, their whispers sharp and angry. "You dare defy the Empire." The priest thundered. "You dare break the sacred laws that bind us." Elias stepped forward. His posture was firm, unwavering. "I do not defy the Empire," he said clearly. "I honor the princess. And I choose her." "Nothing more, nothing less," gasps erupted. Some nobles whispered that he was bold. Some said he was insane. The guards shifted uneasily, unsure whether to obey law or instinct. The priest's face twisted with anger. "No bond may occur without seeing her face. Remove the veil. Reveal her to all, or the bond is forbidden." Leora's chest tightened. The centuries of fear pressed against her, threatening to crush the fragile courage she had discovered. She looked at Elias, eyes wide behind her silver veil. Do you still choose me?" she asked softly. He took her hands gently in his own. "Always. Veil or no veil, curse or no curse, I choose you. I have never been more certain of anything in my life." Her heart ached, torn between fear and hope. The council shouted, demanded obedience, threatened punishment, but she felt his hands steady hers, felt the warmth of his touch, and something inside her broke free. "Then I will not remove it," Elias said firmly. "I will not ask her to reveal what she does not wish. I will not demand her face to prove my bond. She is enough." The hall fell silent, stunned into disbelief. The nobles' mouths opened and closed. The priest's eyes blazed with fury. The emperor, who had remained silent until now, rose slowly, his expression unreadable. "You defy tradition," he said quietly, yet every word carried weight. "You defy every law of our people." Elias did not bow. He did not flinch. "I do not defy the law. I follow truth. Tradition binds, but love frees. I see her as she is, and that is enough." The tension was unbearable. Guards shifted, some stepping closer, some uncertain. Whispers filled the room like wind through hollow stones. The council muttered threats of exile, punishment, and dishonor. Leora felt tears prick her eyes. She had never felt this alive, yet never so vulnerable. And yet standing there, she realized she was not alone. Elias was there, unwavering, holding her hands, offering courage even when all the world demanded fear. Suddenly, a guard stepped forward. "The law is clear," he said, voice hard. "If the princess does not reveal her face, the bond cannot be allowed. You must leave, human." Elias met his gaze steadily. "I will not leave," he said calmly. "And if force is required, then let them try. I will not abandon her." The guard hesitated, unsure whether to act. The hall was frozen, every eye on the unfolding defiance. Leora felt her heart hammer in her chest, but something inside her, something she had almost forgotten, rose in defiance. "I choose him," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "I choose him," the room gasped. Not a murmur, not a whisper, but a gasp. Even the priests paused, shocked by the audacity. Leora lifted her hand slightly, feeling the veil shift with her movement. She had never spoken so boldly before, and yet she felt the weight of her words like wings. The human beside her squeezed her hands gently, his eyes warm and proud. "I will honor your choice," he whispered. The high priest's voice rose again, trembling with anger. "You dare defy sacred law. You dare to choose against the Empire." Leora's chest ached with fear and pride. Her voice, steadier now, cut through the hall like steel. "I do. I am not a legend, not a curse. I am Leora, daughter of this empire, and I choose love over fear, truth over tradition, and him over shadows." A stunned silence fell. The nobles could not believe what they heard. Even the emperor paused, as if weighing centuries of law against a single human's courage and his daughter's choice. In the quiet tension, Elias leaned closer and whispered softly, "You are brave more than any story has ever said, and I am honored to stand with you." Leora felt warmth flood through her, fear and courage twisting into a single, undeniable truth. She was not alone. For the first time, she felt that the veil, the fear and the centuries of legend could not define her. Only she could. Outside the hall, the whispers continued, angry and fearful. But inside where she stood, she felt only a strength she had never known. A human had chosen her, and she had chosen him. No matter the empire, no matter the curse, no matter the world, they were together. And in that choice, Leora found the courage to face anything. The palace seemed darker that night. Shadows stretched across the halls, cast by the pale glow of twin moons. The court had retreated, their anger simmering, but the threat of punishment lingered like a storm waiting to break. Leora stood at her window, staring at the gardens below. Her heart pounded. Fear and hope battled within her chest. Elias entered quietly, his footsteps soft against the polished floor. He did not speak immediately. He simply stood behind her, hands folded, presence steady. Leora could feel the warmth of his attention, the calm strength that had carried her through so many moments of doubt. "They are planning something," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The council. They will not let this pass." Elias nodded slowly. "I know," he said. "They may threaten, they may try to force us apart. But I will not leave. I will stand by you no matter what comes." Her chest tightened at his words. No one had ever spoken with such certainty before. No one had ever offered a promise that felt unbreakable. Her hand instinctively reached for his. The simple touch, so warm, so real, sent a shiver through her. "Do you truly not fear them?" she asked. "I do," Elias admitted. "I fear losing you, yes. I fear the unknown, yes. But I fear more the thought of abandoning you. The thought of letting their laws decide our hearts. I will not." She turned to face him fully, letting her veil catch the silver light. For the first time she noticed how tired the human looked, not in body but in spirit. He had crossed galaxies, faced legends, and challenged a world built on fear, all for her. And yet, his eyes held no regret, only determination. The next morning, the council summoned them both. The great hall was filled to capacity, every noble, priest, and guard present. The tension was electric, almost unbearable. "You defy the sacred laws of Zareth," the high priest bellowed, his robe swaying like dark flames. "You flaunt the traditions that have held our empire together for centuries." Elias stepped forward, calm and unwavering. "I do not flaunt. I respect the laws of your people. But laws were not made to punish the innocent. They were made to guide the just. I see the princess not as a legend, not as a curse, but as a person, and I will stand by her." Murmurs swept through the hall. The nobles whispered, some in anger, some in awe. The guards shifted uneasily. The emperor watched, his face unreadable. "You risk the empire," the priest continued, his voice trembling with fury. "And if disaster comes, if the gods punish us, it will be on your heads." Elias's eyes met Leora's. His grip on her hand tightened ever so slightly. "Then let the risk fall on me," he said softly. "I would rather face danger with her than live in fear without her." Leora felt tears well in her eyes. She had never heard anyone speak like this, anyone who placed her above their own safety, and in that moment a fire ignited in her chest. She could no longer be silent, could no longer hide behind fear or veil. "I choose him," she said clearly, her voice steady despite the trembling in her heart. "I will not let you decide my life. I am not a curse, and I will not be treated as one. I choose truth, and I choose him." A gasp went through the hall. The priest recoiled. The nobles whispered furiously. The Emperor's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained serious. The High Priest's face contorted in anger. You dare defy the sacred law? You dare to choose? Yes, Leora said, lifting her chin. I dare, and he is worthy of my choice. If that angers you, it is your fear, not my courage, that will be judged. The hall fell silent. The tension was almost unbearable. Leora felt Elias squeeze her hand again, a simple gesture that filled her with strength. She knew in that instant that no matter what the council did, no matter what threats they whispered, no one could undo the bond they had formed. Hours later, the council made their decision. They could not punish the human openly. Doing so would risk scandal, rebellion, and the wrath of the Emperor himself. But they would make their displeasure known. Guards were instructed to watch Elias closely. Nobles would refuse him favor, and whispers of disapproval would shadow him at every turn. Yet, Elias did not waver. He walked with her through the palace gardens, hand in hand, eyes bright with determination. They will try to make us afraid, he said quietly. But courage does not come from the absence of danger. It comes from choosing what is right even when the world is against you. Leora rested her head briefly against his shoulder. She could feel the warmth of his hand, the steady beat of his heart, and for the first time she believed it was possible to be brave. To be free, to love without fear. I am afraid, she admitted softly. But with you it is not as heavy. It is bearable. Elias tilted his head, smiling gently. Fear is natural. Courage is choice, and I choose to face everything with you. Always. That night, under the glow of the luminescent trees, Leora removed her gloves and allowed him to hold her hand fully, without hesitation. She felt the warmth spread from her fingers to her chest, filling her with a sense of belonging she had never known. You do not need to see me, she whispered, to understand me. I see you, Elias said simply. I see your soul. I see your courage. I see your heart. And that is enough. Tears streamed down her face, hot and unashamed. The fear that had bound her for so long began to loosen. For the first time in her life, she felt that she was not defined by a veil, a curse, or the whispers of the court. She was defined by her choices, by her heart, and by the human who had crossed galaxies to choose her. The wind rustled through the glowing branches, carrying a sense of promise, of hope, and of defiance. Outside, the Empire seethed with anger, but inside the garden a new force had taken root. Love, brave and unwavering, stronger than fear, stronger than tradition, stronger than any legend. And in that moment, Leora knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. Together they were unstoppable. Together they were free. The day had come. The palace was tense more than ever. Word of the princess's decision to confront her destiny had spread, and the court gathered, whispers sharp as blades. The nobles, priests, and guards all stared, waiting for some mistake, some faltering step, some sign of weakness. But Leora did not falter. She stood tall in the great hall, her silver veil flowing softly over her face. Her hands were steady, her chest lifted. Behind the veil, her heart thumped like a drum, not with fear but with courage. Beside her, Elias's hand rested lightly over hers, offering warmth and unwavering support. You have made your choice, the high priest said, voice quivering with anger and disbelief. But the law is clear. To bond, the veil must be removed. Show your face, or this bond is forbidden. Leora lifted her chin. Her voice, when she spoke, carried through the hall with a strength that made even the Emperor pause. I have made my choice, she said, and the truth is mine to show. A hush fell. All eyes turned to her. The nobles whispered in disbelief. The priest's murmurs became sharp warnings, and the Emperor's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. Elias squeezed her hand gently. You are brave, he whispered. No matter what happens, I am honored to stand with you. Her heart swelled with courage. She took a deep breath, and slowly, deliberately, she lifted the silver veil from her face. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop. The hall, the court, the Empire itself all froze in silence. Her face was revealed, and it was beautiful, not just in the way legend spoke of perfection, but in the way that reflected truth, strength, and vulnerability all at once. Her eyes, wide and shining, held a depth that no veil could hide. Her lips trembled slightly, but they carried a soft determination. Her features were delicate, yes, but they radiated life, courage, and an unspoken story of centuries of fear conquered. The silence broke slowly. Some gasped. Some whispered in awe. The high priest staggered backward, his voice cracking. This cannot be." The nobles murmured among themselves. Some whispered of scandal, others of shock, but none could deny what they saw. The princess had chosen. The princess had revealed herself, and she had chosen the human who loved her. Not the legend, not the curse, not the fear. Elias stepped forward, his gaze locked on hers. "You are more than anyone could imagine," he said softly. "More than stories, more than fear, more than law. And I see you, all of you, always." Leora's heart surged. For the first time she felt completely seen. Not for her veil, not for her title, not for her legend, but for herself. Her hand tightened around his, and her lips curved in a small, genuine smile. "I choose you," she whispered. "And I choose this life, this moment, this love." The emperor rose from his throne. His expression was calm, yet heavy with contemplation. He studied the human, the princess, the bond that defied tradition and law. Finally he spoke, his voice carrying through the hall like quiet thunder. "You have risked much," he said to Elias. "You have crossed worlds, defied customs, and faced the fear of our people. Yet you have done so for truth, for courage, and for love. That is commendable." The high priest sputtered, but the emperor's eyes did not waver. "And you, Leora," he continued, "have shown a courage that surpasses even the oldest legends. You have chosen your own path. That is the mark of a true heir and a true leader." Whispers swept through the hall again, but this time they were different. Respect, awe, and even a hint of admiration mixed with the murmurs of shock. The court could not undo what had happened. The veil had been lifted, and with it centuries of fear. Later, in the quiet of the palace gardens, Leora stood beneath the glowing trees, her face bare for the first time in centuries. Elias joined her, his hand finding hers naturally, effortlessly. "You were beautiful even behind the veil," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "But now the world can see the truth," Leora smiled, a mixture of relief, joy, and awe. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid that my face, my truth would not matter. Afraid that the human who saw me would not stay." Elias cupped her cheek gently. "I am here. I am yours. And I will always be. Veil, curse, or legend, none of that changes the truth I see. You are brave. You are strong. You are my heart." Tears streamed down her face, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of freedom, of love, of life finally unshackled. She leaned into his touch, feeling the warmth of his hands, the steadiness of his heart, the depth of his devotion. And for the first time she believed fully in a future not dictated by fear, legend, or law, but by choice, courage, and love. The empire, though slow to understand, began to shift. The nobles who had opposed them whispered less. The priests muttered prayers of adjustment rather than anger, and the emperor allowed the bond to be recognized not as a defiance, but as a new truth for the people to follow. Leora and Elias walked together in the gardens, hand in hand, laughing softly, sharing quiet words and small stories of their worlds. She had never felt so alive, so free, so complete. "You changed everything," she said quietly, "not just for me, but for everyone who feared to choose their own path." Elias shook his head gently. "No, you did that. I only followed your courage." She rested her head against his shoulder, feeling his warmth, his heartbeat, his unwavering devotion. "Then we did it together," she whispered. He kissed the top of her head, soft and gentle. "Together," he agreed. Above them, the stars shone brighter than ever, as though witnessing a moment the universe had waited centuries to see. A human and an alien princess, bound not by law, not by legend, but by choice, trust, and the courage to see each other truly. And in that choice, Leora and Elias found something more powerful than any law or legend could ever be. Freedom, love, and the unshakable proof that courage, human courage, could transcend even the greatest of fears. The veil was gone. The legend had changed, and the universe had a new story to whisper among the stars. A story where love was stronger than fear. A story where the human chose, and the alien princess was finally seen. A story where hearts, not legends, ruled.